In my Halo75 review, I briefly mentioned the odd spacebar that my unit came with, which didn't seem to match the rest of the included keycaps, nor did it match the white one that also came in the box. But not only did it look different, it also lacked the advertised GhostBar feature which was so prominently showcased on the website. I wasn't the only one missing out though. Turns out it was simply not yet available when the original Halo65 shipped. A little later, NuPhy did try to make up for it by supplying a free upgrade to those who bought one early, albeit with a $3 shipping fee attached to it. Of course, one could argue that they simply shouldn't have sold a product without all of its features being ready in the first place, which I kind of agree with, but it was still nice to see them trying. I somehow missed the announcement though, so I never had a chance to get my hands on one, but with the arrival of the Halo75, this finally changes. Now, you're probably wondering, does a single spacebar alone warrant an entire video? Probably not. However, after playing around with it, there are a few things that I thought were interesting enough to at least share, so let's take a closer look at this GhostBar and where NuPhy seems to be going with this and what they and other manufacturers could learn from it. Of course, before we get into the GhostBar, just in case you never heard of the NuPhy Halo bars, I will quickly run through some basics. Feel free to skip ahead to the third chapter just in case you're already familiar though. As the name suggests, we find ourselves yet again with another 75% layout, which are really making the rounds these days. Just like when the AR75 got its smaller sibling, the AR60, the Halo75 is the bigger brother to the Halo65. Same design, same build, same functionality, but with the added function row at the very top. Luckily I got the second color option this time around, the black one, and after having had a chance to see both in person, I can safely say that I prefer this one, although I think they should have gone with less contrasting keycaps. The very deep black on white is nice, but I wish NuPhy would have stayed to the usual more muted color schemes of their boards. The caps are otherwise identical too, featuring the KOP profile while being made of a single piece of PBT, with the lettering being dye sublimated. The quality seems to be the same as well. You get the occasional escape attempt from a single character, just like we did before, but otherwise these are perfectly fine caps. Not great, but fine. On the bottom we still find the two-stage kickstand as well as the signature badge, and turning to the back we got the on-off and wired wireless switch as well as the little magnetic compartment that holds the 2.4 GHz dongle, making this board somewhat more convenient to carry to an office or outside. We also have the same lighting options as the 65, including the small strip, which is still one of my favorite features. I don't like per key RGB and will therefore never turn it on, but it is here. However, the caps still feature no shine through. NuPhy does offer a set that has, and although I've never seen it in person, comments on my previous video have pointed out that they are apparently not that great. I didn't expect anything to change on the inside, but I still opted to take a peek just out of curiosity, this time without breaking it. Everything seemed to be the same. We got the pre-loop clip-in stabilizers, foam, and a silicone base. Wait a second. Where was it? Oh yes, it's not silicone, it's silicone. Okay, I get it, it's silicone. My apologies, I will pronounce it correctly from here on out. Okay, so we got the pre-loop clip-in stabilizers, foam, and the silicones base, which results in a nice dense sound that I quite like. Something that has changed or expanded though are the switch choices. With the Halo65, NuPhy introduced the baby kangaroos, which are their collaboration with Gateron on a linear switch, and now there's even more. Night Breeze, Rose Glacier, and baby raccoons. I don't know how they come up with these names, but I like it. I like it! I ended up with the Rose Glaciers on my Halo75. That's the tactile offering, and just like with the baby kangaroos, these are pretty great. Now, it has to be said that I'm not a big fan of their other options, which are the Gateron G Pros. I don't know why those bother me, but I just never felt like sticking to Gateron Pros for longer than I had to, so I'm very glad that NuPhy offers an alternative. Honestly, if you do pick a Halo, I would recommend you go with one of their custom switches over any of the G Pro variants. I personally think you get a little more with these, although for the babies you also have to pay a little more. Regardless of what you pick though, you will get at least one of each in the included accessory box. This way you can give all of them a try and maybe get an additional set later. But keep in mind that a single switch won't really give you the whole picture of how a board feels or sounds. I still really appreciate NuPhy going the extra mile though and including all of this and other accessories with each unit they sell. I know you usually get some extras with pre-builds, but from all the ones I tried, this has been the most extensive one yet, and if you're into it, you also get a little poster and some stickers. Alright, I think that should cover the basics. Functionality wise, the additional row won't get you anything that the Halo75 isn't capable of. I mean, you get the ability to activate certain functions without having to use a modifier, but it's not like the Halo65 or any other 65% keyboard won't let you do something that a 75% board does. It just makes it more accessible. If you'd like to learn more about the Halo series, feel free to watch my previous video on the 65, which covers the board and its features in much more detail. And if you're looking for tips on modifications, may I recommend you to take a closer look at the video from Keyboard. That man knows what he's talking about. Now it's time to take a closer look at the fabled spacebar and why this might be one of the coolest things I've seen in recent times, but also why it kinda bums me out. Right after the gate you'll notice it sounds good, really good. I mean, considering that it only has stock looped stabs, it's a pretty great starting point. In fact, I might say it's the best starting point, but it's not without flaws. When you hit the spacebar for the first time, you will immediately notice that it feels a bit squishy at the end, like the bottoming out isn't as firm and solid as you're used to. This is because the piece where the stem goes into is made of silicone as well. It's no laughing matter though, it cushions your downward stroke, affecting not only sound, but unfortunately also a little bit of feel. Further inspection of the bar reveals a two-piece construction that can be separated with the bent side of an Allen wrench. It might take a few soft pushes on either side, but eventually it'll start to give in and lift. But be very careful when you do this, you don't want to end up breaking it. Once accomplished, you'll see that this is no ordinary spacebar. Instead of a single stem holder or whatever you want to call these things, it has two that hold on to the softer one in the middle, which incidentally also answers the question whether or not you can move this feature to another spacebar, which is a clear no. Well, you could move the entire bar, but since the profile and color on the KOP keycaps aren't exactly common nor do they blend in that well, it's a difficult choice to make. Now if you're thinking, I like this and I will just use the included white one, this will get me close enough in terms of looks while still giving me the fat tone I seek. Well, I hate to break it to you, but for some reason the white one has been thoroughly exercised and no longer possesses any ghostly features. Unlike with the initial release of the Halo75 though, I don't think we are dealing with a pending feature here. We'll simply have to accept that the white one is just a plain old spacebar. But the silly stem holder is not the only part of the equation. Inside of the board we also find two additional softies, one on each side of the switch, and those surprisingly can be transferred to another board, but it has to have the proper cutouts for it to work. For example, the QK65, at least the wireless version, cannot. The Keyboard Mega on the other hand can, so here's an example of this additional bumper added to the Mega and how it affects its sound. If my ears don't deceive me, I would say that it's a tiny bit softer at the very end, which depending on taste can be considered an improvement. However, it is so minuscule that if you were seeking something like this, modding the stabs would certainly be a better place to invest your time in. You could also look at other solutions. For example, KB Defense has been selling a spacebar foam kit for a while now, and although I never tried it, after this I'm very curious to see how it compares to the GhostBar. But regardless of how they stack up against each other, I think both aren't really a proper solution to the actual problem. There was another question in my 2022 Q&A post that I found very interesting, and actually all the questions were really interesting, so thank you again for the participation. That was a lot of fun, but the one that I mean is this one here. Do you think that foams are an excuse for manufacturers to be more lax with the design of the case itself? For example, the case can be made to sound good without foam, but takes more effort to design and to make. Yes, I do think so, and even though we are talking about silicone here, it applies just as well. A short disclaimer though, I am not a keyboard designer and have very little knowledge of what it actually takes to bring a keyboard into reality. So for me to say that it's a cop-out feels a bit wrong, judgmental and shallow, but in my defense, assuming the usual strategies that companies try to follow, which is somewhere in between, let's try to save as much money as possible while still making a product that people will actually want to buy, the act of simply adding silicone or foam is a way to give the impression that the board offers more than it actually does. Now, I don't think this is entirely the case here, considering the overly complex solution that NuPhy came up with, but the fact is just adding extra materials is easier than creating an entire board built around good acoustic properties, and the same goes for tuning the spacebar. If you've ever built a keyboard, looped, modded stabs, done whatever in order to get those perfect acoustic properties, you know how difficult it can be. Some boards are easier to work with than others, but the biggest issue is consistency. Even on the same board, if you had to build it twice, sometimes the first one works right out the gate while the second one takes ages or never truly feels done. So you end up with inconsistency, which is something a manufacturer simply cannot afford to do. They need to sell the same experience to as many people as possible, and the only way to do that is by creating a solution that works well enough, but doesn't fix the actual problem, because that would require manual labor that is simply too expensive. So we end up with this patchwork solution we got here. Don't get me wrong, I think the GhostBar is actually brilliant, and I wish more companies would try to come up with solutions like this, but I also wish that NuPhy didn't take this proprietary approach, giving other boards a chance to wield this power too. Even though I didn't like the softer bottoming out, having the option to use this feature on other boards would have been nice. Maybe it's the lazy portion of me that doesn't like tweaking stabs, or just plain curiosity to see where this would go. Whatever the case may be, it could have at least allowed people who don't do this on a daily basis to get somewhat close to what experienced tuners can achieve without collapsing into madness while trying to get there. But alas, it is restricted to the Halo boards, which are great, don't get me wrong, it makes an already competent pre-build even better. One could even say the force is very strong in this one. Hey, thanks so much for watching, and I hope you liked this shorter, although not by much, video. And I know I said there would be less keyboard videos, and this is already the second one this year, and lo and behold, the next one will be another one, so I'm really not that good at sticking to my resolutions. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and I wish you all the best, and see you in the next one. Bye!